Part 47. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 480. To be honest, I don't have any clue. After Kaylan said this, he switched to one-on-one communication mode with the Hound, and said in a voice that only two people could hear, "My abilities are in this tunnel." There was no reaction inside. You also know the triggering conditions for those memory fragments. Only things related to Alpha civilization can activate them, so I think this tunnel was built by a third party. It's not necessarily inside that Yagunactor. Don't tell me you guessed it, the Hound whispered. Hey, it's really just a guess. Anyway, things are already outrageous enough, so why not just guess in the most outrageous direction? Maybe I will be fooled, Kaylan joked. Then what do you think we should do now? You are the commander of the reconnaissance team. If you don't even have a clue, how can you lead this team? Hound said worriedly. Everyone's condition is quite stable now, but it would be a lie to say that I am not worried at all. Once this uneasiness spreads, or even turns into panic, the situation will be difficult to control. Especially those guys from the security bureau. I don't know about the others, but the leading lady is obviously not on the right track with us. Let's go forward along the tunnel first. The information we have now is too poor. It's a waste of time to guess here. It's better to take a step at a time. Maybe there will be clues ahead. When Kaylan said this, the communication channel was switched from one-to-one to all members of the reconnaissance team. Maybe what's waiting for us ahead is not a clue, but some kind of monster. As soon as Layton said it, he got a kick from the Hound on the butt. Shut your crow mouth. Even if it's a monster, it's still a clue, Yvonne said. I'm really looking forward to seeing something unusual. Anyway, it's better than staring at this unchanging tunnel. That's right, seeing someone standing on his side, Layton instantly gained confidence and raised his chin towards the Hound. All fear comes from the lack of firepower. If you really encounter any monster, just blast it into pieces. It's okay to be a scumbag. After saying that, Layton pulled the bolt of the heavy machine gun in an ostentatious manner. Haha, the rain has stopped and the sky has cleared up. You think you can do it again, right? How can you do it? Why don't you just fight your way out of the heretical sex control area? Okay, if you want to chat, let's chat on the road. It's time to take action. After Kaylan finished speaking, he was the first to climb onto Valkyrie's back. Oh, if I had known earlier, I should have installed a few detachable seats on the back of this machine, or even a base for fixing the power armor, Layton said as he climbed to Valkyrie's shoulder, placing the heavy machine gun on the top of the machine's head. Everyone get on the car and let's go, Hound greeted the others, and he himself threw the backpacks filled with rations into the cockpit of the aircraft. It's 1:50 in the afternoon. Yes, I just had a meal 2 hours ago and the next meal is scheduled to be served 10 hours later. Is that okay? If someone is so hungry that they feel dizzy, don't hold on and just say it. I don't want to be blamed for it. The attrition occurred in advance due to supply problems. The reconnaissance team rode in the mecha and marched in the tunnel for 9 hours. During these 9 hours, the surrounding scenery did not change at all, if they hadn't left traces with dye along the way. Almost wondering if I have been spinning in circles. The moving speed of the mecha is about 50 to 60 yards, which means we have almost traveled 50 kilometers in this tunnel. Damn, even the channel tunnel on Earth is only that long, the Hound complained. Even if we are really inside the Yagunactor, we are almost at the end, right? The diameter of the arc is 400 kilometers. Is it possible that this thing can grow to several hundred kilometers in length? If space folding technology is used, the space inside the battleship may be much larger than the volume that can be observed from the outside, Kaylan said. If the civilization that built this battleship is really more advanced than the Alpha civilization, I think it is entirely possible for them to master technology that only exists in science fiction novels. That's really... Before the Hound could say anything, a strange gurgling sound suddenly interrupted him. Who? whose stomach is growling. He was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at the others. Ayabrita had a blush on her face and was pressing her belly with her hands. However, what made her a little embarrassed was that when the hound looked at her, her stomach growled unsatisfactorily. Got up. Suddenly, her face became even redder. The hound immediately burst into laughter. I thought the people in your security bureau were all robots who didn't need to eat and poop, so your stomachs grow when you're hungry. The peristalsis of the intestines and gastrointestinal tract is a normal phenomenon. I am not a biochemically modified person, so it is impossible to control it. Aya defended in a low voice. She only ate very little food in her last meal, Kaylan said from the side. Among the 5 agents, Aya, the team leader, had the most food left. This was not because she had a backpack. There is more food in it than the other 4 people, but this is because she only eats half of the others every time she eats, even though she consumes no fewer calories than the others during movement. Are you on a diet to stay in shape? Hound laughed and joked, can you still hold on? Dinner will be served in an hour. If you really can't stand it anymore, I'll tell you 2 dirty jokes. Distract yourself. Joking aside, even though the hound said so, he handed over an energy bar in his hand. Aya glanced at him in surprise, reached out to take the energy bar, and then said thank you in reply. You're better than the security agents I've met before. Those guys who are like 2,580,000 people don't know how to say thank you. Hound took out a lighter from his pocket and shook it with a pop. He opened the metal lid and gently rubbed the grinding wheel. The flickering flames instantly rose up. Lighten, you will find a way to get an iron pot out later. Let's cook. The word soup for cooking soup could not be uttered, but this time, no one interrupted the hound. The hound stared blankly at the flames ignited by the lighter, then put it out numbly, and then lit it again. What the hell? What the hell? Layton couldn't help but ask, old dog, what did you see? Lighter, this lighter is a fake antique I bought at the flea market. This thing is a replica of an old era kerosene lighter. How can it be lit here? Hound murmured. What's going on? It took 2 seconds for Layton to react, and his body suddenly froze. What did you say? This is just a kerosene lighter? There is no oxygen supply pipe. The hound stared at the flame swaying on the top of the cotton core. Suddenly, he pulled off his helmet and took a deep breath. There's oxygen. There's plenty of oxygen in this tunnel. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 481. The emotional hound said several times in a row. If there is humming oxygen in this damn place, why are the experts from the 3 institutes humming? Will he be suffocated to death? Although the series of shouts by the hound were extremely pregnant, everyone still understood what he wanted to express, and the atmosphere in the tunnel suddenly became weird. Layton silently opened the mask of his helmet, tried to take a few breaths of the air in the tunnel, and then nodded to Kaylan. The results of my artificial lung show that there are no toxic gases in the air, and the oxygen content is within more than 20%, just like most places on Alpha Planet. It can fully meet human survival needs. Didn't the cause of death of those 3 people be suffocation? Then what killed them? Kaylan pondered. Their cause of death was suffocation, and the oxygen content in the tunnel where the bodies were found was less than 5% and was full of highly toxic gases. Yvonne said calmly, the composition of this tunnel and the air there are not the same. Are not the same. But I can't feel the wind at all. Kaylan also opened the helmet visor, took off his gloves at the same time, put his fingers into his mouth, moistened them with saliva, and raised them above his head. Tunnel, there is no obvious sign of air movement inside. It's a pity. If they could have come this far, they might not have been suffocated to death. Layton sighed. Perhaps, they walked out from here. Kaylan paused and then continued, the direction of the 3 of them may be completely opposite to ours. Then they should have turned back in time when they noticed the lack of oxygen. If they still bravely walked in, isn't this looking for death? Leighton asked doubtfully. Could it be that we are going in the wrong direction? Is this the place where the three experts would rather suffocate to death than escape? Ivan turned his head and looked at the front of the tunnel. I feel like the hairs on my back are standing on end. Hound hurriedly put the lighter back into his pocket and picked up the gun. Are we still going forward? Could it be that we accidentally passed through another one-way transmission device? Ayabrita looked at Kaylan. In this way, the air composition of the two tunnels is completely different, and there is no gas flow. The signs and the deaths of the three experts can be explained. If we want to verify this guess, we need to go back to the corpse. Kaylan turned around and looked at the long lines drawn with fluorescent dye on the ground. Going back and forth will waste nearly 20 hours, and the results may not be obtained. Then what are your plans? Keep moving forward, Kaylan said. I'm very curious about what those three experts discovered while they were still alive. Damn, I thought it was okay at first, but now that I'm doing this, the dark tunnel in front of me always feels like a big mouth eating people. Hound said, taking out a handful of compressed biscuits from his backpack and giving them to everyone. Everyone should first put a piece of compressed biscuit on him. If there is any unexpected situation and it is too late to eat, just take a piece of biscuit to deal with it. To be honest, if there is any emergency later, I'm afraid I won't even have time to chew biscuits. Leighton stuffed the biscuits into the carrying bag on his chest. Besides, when a battle breaks out, it's probably I don't feel hungry anymore. That's because you're not so hungry that you have hypoglycemia. Hound stood up and poked a chestnut on Leighton's helmet. If you have been to the front-line battlefield, you will find that many soldiers chew dry food while fighting. Those who are shooting at the same time have to eat even if they don't have time. People are like rice and steel, do you understand? Indeed, although the adrenaline secreted when you are nervous can temporarily block the brain's perception of hunger, the energy consumption is real. Even in a fierce battle, you may lose your eyesight and fall to the ground. Yifan added that as a doctor, his words are still very convincing. That's right, if you don't listen to the old man's words, you will suffer the consequences. In my opinion, a guy like you with no actual combat experience will still be a new recruit even if he retires. Hound began to push further. Can you blame me? I applied several times to be transferred to a combat unit, but my superiors didn't agree. Alas, there's nothing I can do. It's all because I'm too skilled, and the big guys in charge of logistics are reluctant to send me out. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Leighton countered, not to be outdone. TCH, if I had been working in logistics, I would have been promoted to a general officer long ago. That fat pig Maginot would have to salute me when he saw me. Look at you, you are still just a technical sergeant until you retire. How shameful, isn't it embarrassing? Seeing that Leighton dared to talk back, the Hound immediately turned on the yin and yang mode. Fart, when I retired, I held the rank of lieutenant. Is a lieutenant great? If you are really capable and can serve as a 7th-term sergeant and hold the title of first-class sergeant major, then you are still promising. A lieutenant is a hammer, and the front-line troops can make a lot of money. If I could become a first-class sergeant as a mechanical repairman, I would have joined the equipment department of the institute long ago, Leighton said, suddenly patting the Valkyrie 1 under his butt. But then again, now the situation is not bad either. Those top guys from the research institute and the top mechanics from the YIP consortium have spent a lot of money to build things, but I haven't been able to take them apart for fun. Hey, if I can reach this point, my life is considered complete. Looking at your potential, I don't even want to talk about you anymore. You've simply brought me down, Hound complained. This time, Kaylan did not stop the two of them from bickering. After being pulled by them, the originally tense atmosphere disappeared without a trace. Even Aya, who had always had a straight face, relaxed and whispered to her hands. The agents started chatting. Of course, the content of their chat was much more serious than that of Hound and Leighton. They were basically discussing how to deal with emergencies and follow-up action route planning. Although the current situation is not optimistic, at least no one showed too many negative emotions. But the mecha suddenly stopped. Everyone stopped talking almost instantly and grabbed their weapons. About 30 meters ahead, a brass-colored bullet casing lay on the ground. The shell casing stood out on the spotless metal floor. The Alpha Civilization's weapon list does not include metal-cased fixed-loading ammunition. This kind of thing can only come from the human world. That is a 10mm caliber full-power cartridge case. It is the ammunition used by the ARC-01 type and a series of derivative models of the same caliber, Layton said silently. Park San-ju. Do you remember what weapons those people who entered the lava channel carried? Kaylan suddenly turned his head and shouted to the rescue cabin. P.S. Thanks to Su Ditai and Tudu Yanjeo for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you to the opponent Quick Surrender for the reward of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 482. I don't remember. Park Sang-woo said at a loss, but, that security guard is the 7th level reformer I mentioned. He should have a gun. As for the model of firearm I carried, I didn't pay much attention. Damn it, it seems those 3 people really came out of this place. Hound cursed secretly, took out a compressed biscuit from his pocket, tore open the package and stuffed it in whole mouth. While performing this series of actions, his eyes were always staring at the front of the tunnel, and the assault rifle was tightly held under his arm, maintaining a posture ready to shoot at any time. Everyone immediately stood up and grasped the weapons in their hands. No one spoke anymore, which made the sound of hounds chewing biscuits very clear in the tunnel. Kaylan raised his palm and made a slowly advance gesture, letting Valentina control the machine and slowly walk forward. Layton, go check this shell, Kaylan said softly. Layton nodded, jumped off the back of the mecha, landed on the ground, bent down and picked up the bullet casing. It is indeed a 10mm caliber ARC series full-power bullet. The inscription on the bottom is that it was a new product produced by the military arsenal in 1948, Layton said. Furthermore, judging from the propellant residue, the deformation of the shell and the firing pin, judging from the collision marks, this bullet should have been fired in fully automatic shooting mode. At worst, it was a long burst of more than 5 rounds. Can such a thing be seen? Jolajitu asked in surprise. Well, I have touched many guns and bullets, so I can still see some differences. What's more, the big guy's original occupation is dealing with weapons, so his judgment is still very reliable. Hound explained that in this situation, he had no intention of joking anymore. But the problem is that if it was fully automatic shooting, this should not be the only bullet casing left behind. Could it have been picked up by someone? Yvonne asked. Everyone get out of the car, Kaylan said solemnly, change to the number 4 advancement formation and continue to move forward. The number 4 advancement formation is a team-sized infantry tank coordination formation. It is generally used for frontal assaults on local positions that have been washed away by artillery and missiles. Although the reconnaissance team does not have tanks or armored vehicles, it uses mechas to replace combat vehicles. It is also completely feasible. Valkyrie 1 was at the front to clear the way, with Zwilligitu and Layton in heavy armor on both wings, responsible for fire containment. The others used mechas as cover to quickly follow up. Everyone put their own. His index finger was pressed against the trigger guard, ready to fire at any time. After advancing 50 meters along the tunnel, they picked up a dozen more almost identical bullet casings, which made everyone's nerves even more tense. The area where the battle took place should be not far ahead. There seems to be something on the ground in the distance, Layton whispered, turning the searchlight beam. It was a gun with an exploded chamber. The barrel opened like petals. The torn steel bars were tangled together. There were still traces of the metal melting and then solidifying again on the surface. A large capacity CMAG drum magazine lies quietly not far from the rifle. It's the ARC-199 squad-level light machine gun. Judging from the length of the barrel, this one should still be a carbine type with the barrel cut off, Layton said, because the caliber of the ammunition used has not changed. It is still a 10mm full-power bullet. Therefore, the recoil of this thing is much greater than that of the 0-1 rifle. Without a bracket, only enhanced people or modified people can control the gun in fully automatic shooting. My troops never choose this thing. Among squad-level light machine guns, there are many better choices than this thing. This thing has no merit except that it is easy to carry and can be interchanged with the ARC rifle, Hound said. There is still a difference between the ARC-199 and the 0-1 rifle. In order to support long-term continuous shooting, the barrels of the original ARC-199 have been specially strengthened. The content of the nano alloy is around 8%, which requires the barrel is much more resistant to grass than the 0-1 type. To be honest, this is the first time I have seen an ARC-199 with an exploded chamber. Layton shook his head. Although it is a machine gun, the method of use must be long burst shooting. For short burst shooting, there will be no problem with the performance of the original barrel. Unless the user empties 4 or 5 drums in one go, and there is almost no gap in between, there is a possibility of the chamber exploding. Then maybe it's not the original barrel, Hound said. It's almost impossible. I think, their project shouldn't be short of such funds, right? Having said that, Layton still stepped forward and picked up the exploded machine gun. It's the original barrel, hiss. I'm afraid it fired at least 1,000 rounds in a row. Layton pulled out the blooming barrel and took a look at it. A large capacity CMAG drum can only hold 80 rounds of 10mm caliber ARC series full power ammunition, but who would carry a dozen heavy and obstructive CMAG drums on their body? Even the ammunition chain box weighing tens of kilograms carried by a heavy armed fireman can only hold 500 rounds of ammunition. Look, there are blood stains on the grip and receiver of this gun, Hound said. Could it be that the gunman was injured when he exploded the chamber? Didn't he even wear armor or protective clothing? It's not like that. Layton shook his head. If the man was really injured by the explosion, the blood would not have reached the handle. It's not just the explosion of the barrel. If he didn't take off his armored gauntlets and gloves, there shouldn't be any blood stains on the handle, Yvonne said sharply. But this is good news for us. Apart from these blood stains, there are also a lot of muscle tissue fragments left in the anti-slip groove. At least we can use these clues to determine the identity of the gun owner. There are 2 most accurate ways to determine a person's identity: bone scans and DNA information. Unlike the old era where DNA information was only collected from people with criminal records, on ARC, when everyone is born, their DNA information will be entered into the archives and tied to their personal files. The blood stains and muscle tissue were carefully scraped off with steel needles and put into glass tubes containing reagents, and then the glass tubes were inserted into the detection equipment. Fortunately, the reconnaissance team's mission this time was to search and rescue survivors in the mining area, and to determine the identity of the victims, so these devices are almost all available. But what people didn't expect was that they would come in handy in this situation. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 483. The information of the person corresponding to this DNA was quickly found out. It was a man named Alfonso Gonzalez Sanchez. He was 41 years old and had served in the 2nd Corps of the Field Force. After retiring, employed by the Institute, he is a level 7 enhancer. Note, enhanced humans are a type of biochemically modified humans, but they do not install cyborg prosthetics. Therefore, for the convenience of distinction in the following text, pure physical enhancements such as Marshall and Park Sang-woo are called enhanced humans, while those like Layton, people like Victoria who are equipped with cyborg prosthetics, are called cyborgs. Yes. Alfonso, that's him, Park Sang-woo in the rescue cabin suddenly shouted. The security guard who entered the lava channel with Mueller and the others is named Alfonso. He is a 7th level enhanced person. The 7th level enhanced person, his physical strength is comparable to that of King Kong. Layton whispered. This kind of person, even if he doesn't wear any protective equipment, will be very difficult to be injured by the fragments splashed out when the barrel is exploded. Arrive. At this time, Kaylan suddenly looked at Aya and said, is this testing equipment specially made by your security bureau? What's wrong? Aya felt a little confused about Ian's somewhat inappropriate question. Can this thing detect whether this person is infected by the cells of the corrosion seed? Aya, you doubt him. This possibility cannot be ruled out. The results of the cell contamination test came out quickly. The 7th level enhanced man named Alfonso was not infected by the seed of corrosion, at least not before his blood stained the gun. Kaylan, do we still want to move forward? Something that can make a 7th level enhanced person go crazy and shoot the barrel into the chamber, I'm afraid it's not easy to deal with. The hound's face was full of worry. If you want to know, think of other ways, try to see if you can drill through the outer wall of this tunnel. If this tunnel is connected to the wormhole-like transmission device, it is very likely that we will be torn apart by the twisted space the moment it is penetrated. Kaylan rejected the proposal, but don't worry too much. I feel that the enemies Alfonso encountered may not be as terrifying as you think. What do you mean? Hound was stunned. If the enemy is really strong, then Alfonso will have no chance to fight back and will be killed instantly, but now, his barrel has exploded, which means that he has at least emptied several drums, that is to say, the duration of the battle is not too short. Kaylan paused and continued, the combat effectiveness of those experts and pilots can basically be eliminated. A 7th level enhanced person without heavy weapons can rely on if a light machine gun can deal with the enemy for so long, it proves that the enemy is not very strong. Of course, the premise is that the opponent does not have the mentality of toying with prey. It seems to make sense. Hound nodded subconsciously. At least our team's combat effectiveness this time is much stronger than that of a 7th level enhanced person. But you still have to be cautious. Kaylan continued, maintain the formation. In addition, Layton, please send 2 drones out to watch the front and rear of the team. There is no need to reach the limit control distance. 100, just about a meter will do. Yeah. Layton took out 2 robotic dog-shaped drones from the equipment box specially designed for drones. After setting a series of parameters, the 2 drones headed in 2 completely different directions. Ran out. Before the team could set off again, the drone running forward made a new discovery. A corpse. In the picture transmitted back by the drone, a bright red human body was lying on the ground. At first, Kaylan and the others thought that the red color was blood flowing out. It was not until the image with a higher resolution was refreshed that they discovered that, this is a man whose skin has been stripped off. The red color on the body surface is actually the exposed muscle tissue. The white pixels they originally thought were skin were fascia covering the surface of the muscles. Damn, it looks weird, the hound said while picking the biscuit crumbs left in his teeth with his nails. Although the things on the screen were very visually impressive, but for those who have seen too much blood on the battlefield, for him, the scene was not too exciting. The reactions of the others were all normal. Only Park Sang-woo's face looked very pale. He didn't know whether it was because of excessive blood loss or because he was frightened by the skinned man. Let the drone patrol the area around the corpse, and we will go there, Kaylan said. The reconnaissance team quickly arrived at the place where the drone found the body. Seeing the skinned body up close was a completely different feeling than seeing it on the screen. At least, Park Sang-woo's expression was even worse. I can't even smell the smell of blood, the hound frowned. Looking at the texture of the muscles on the body, it seems that the blood has been drained. Could it be that the thing that killed him also likes to suck human blood? Yvonne squatted down, poked the muscles on the back of the corpse with the handle of the scalpel, and said to Kaylan, the muscles are relatively stiff, and rigor mortis has not completely subsided. Thanks to the dry environment in the tunnel, the soft tissue has rotted. The degree is not obvious. Considering that the deceased was a high-level enhanced person, the initial judgment is that the time of death is about 4 to 6 days. It has been more than a week since the earthquake occurred. It seems that he did not die when the Yagun actor fell. I analyzed. Can the cause of death be found out? Kaylan asked. There is no obvious trauma on the body surface, although the skin has been peeled off. The peeling technique seems to be perfect. Not only is the subcutaneous tissue such as fat and glands removed cleanly, but the muscles and fascia are not injured at all, and it cannot be removed from the outside. To determine the cause of his death, I need to perform an autopsy, Ivan replied. Let's check the identity of the deceased first, Kaylan said. Ivan used a clean scalpel to scrape off a little tissue from the thigh of the corpse and sent it into the testing equipment. The DNA comparison results were completely consistent with Alfonso Gonzalez Sanchez. The strength of body tissue is basically in line with the level of a 7th-level enhanced person. Wait a minute, this guy seems to be holding something in his hand, the usually sharp-eyed hound suddenly said. Kaylan looked down and saw that there seemed to be something pinched between the fingers in Alfonso's clenched right fist. This guy's fingers are completely frozen. Damn, the bones of a level 7 enhanced person are so hard, I'll just cut off 2 fingers. Are you okay? A sharp blade popped out of the hound's gauntlet. This is a high-frequency particle vibrating knife. As for the storage mechanism and shape, it refers to the hidden weapon in Assassin's Creed. If it's just a finger, no problem, it won't affect the anatomy. Ivan nodded. Then I'll cut it. After saying that, the hound leaned the blade against it. What Alfonso held in his fist was a piece of paper with a series of letters crookedly written on it. Alga? No, this isn't English. The hound frowned and read, it looks like it's in Spanish. It should be Spanish. People named Alfonso are basically descendants of people who lived in Spanish-speaking areas in the old era. By the way, old dog, don't you understand Spanish? Kaylan took the note. Hey, in Spanish, I just know a few numbers, the hound said, a little embarrassed. That's right, the number of Spanish speakers now is much smaller than in the old era, Kaylan said while looking at the note. But he only took one look and his whole body froze. The note read Alejate de esa cama. Translated into English is stay away from that bed or leave the bed. Why does this sentence appear here? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 484. Leave the bed. The first time Kaylan saw this secret message was on the shell of the diving cabin of the Pioneer icebreaker. The second time was on that mysterious desert island, in the mission log of Sergeant Collins, and this sentence also recorded on paper was the stone pillar carved with the giant eye totem under the sea. There is also the password code for the black box of the 776 Special Forces team, which is also the same sentence. But why did this sentence appear on the note clutched in Alfonso Gonzalez Sanchez's hand? It was 48 years ago that the 776th Special Forces Squadron disappeared. No, it should be the 49th year now, half a century apart. To say that this sentence appears on the inside of the submersible's shell is because there is an inseparable connection between the undersea city and the mysterious desert island. This is barely justified, but now this tunnel can be closely related to the undersea city. What's the connection? The molten mine area and the undersea city are almost at the two ends of Alpha Star, and the straight line distance between the surface and the surface exceeds 20,000 kilometers, not to mention, this tunnel should belong to the more advanced civilization that built Agunakota. There is no trace of Alpha civilization here. Kaylan felt a little confused. In addition, there was another discovery that made him even more puzzled. Leave the bed. He originally thought that bed did not refer to bed in the literal sense, because in English, bed not only refers to a bed used for sleeping, but also refers to riverbed and riverbed. Interpretations such as seabed and nursery can even be understood as extended meanings such as having sexual relations and performing reproductive behaviors when used as a transitive verb. Kaylan once thought that this was a warning. The bed in it referred to the hatchery in the abyss. Deep in the hatchery, there was a huge fusion body dormant. If it hadn't been for the encounter with that a group of giant nautilus clinging to the cliff, he may have already become the nourishment of the fusion body. If you understand it this way, there seems to be no problem. The level of danger in the hatchery is indeed very high. The comprehensive strength of the fusion may have approached the level of the prehistoric species. With the ability of individual humans, there is no way to compete with it. But the problem is, when this sentence is translated into Spanish, this explanation becomes a bit untenable. In Spanish, comma is rarely used to refer to things like seabed or nursery. In addition to the most commonly used meaning of bed, there is also another meaning of nest. A nest, animal's habitat, can also be used as a quantifier, such as a litter of cubs. If the hatchery is the habitat of the fusion, this seems to be true, but when the English word bed and the Spanish word comma overlap, the only one who can correctly identify it as bed is such a meaning. Moreover, combined with the previous clues, the 776 Special Team did not carry diving equipment, so they naturally could not go deep into the seabed to approach the abyss hatchery, let alone discover the monster lurking in the hatchery, take 10,000 steps back. In other words, even if they did find the fusion body, Kaylan would not be able to find their skeletons in the cave. Could it be that the bed in this secret phrase really refers to the bed used for sleeping? Stay away from that bed. What does this mean? Any words of advice for those who have difficulty getting out of bed? No one would be so humorous that he would still make a joke to the world at the last moment of his life, right? And, there's not just one person doing this. This must be a very important secret phrase, but it is a pity that Kaylan cannot understand its meaning. What does this sentence mean, Kaylan? Hound asked from the side. You can't read it even if you don't know it, right? I really can't read it. But I can translate it into English, Kaylan said. What did you say? How can you translate if you can't read? Hound was confused. Leave the bed. Kaylan muttered silently. What? What are you leaving? Before the Hound could realize what Kaylan said at the first moment, he heard a crack sound behind him. Asano Akira, who had been insignificant along the way, had already pulled the sword out of the scabbard. Out. At this time, the Hound finally came to his senses, and the expression on his face suddenly became extremely exciting. Is that what was written on this guy's note? Leave the bed, stay away from that bed. If I remember correctly, the last time it appeared was in the diving cabin salvaged from the Pioneer icebreaker, right? Ayabrita walked over with a look on her face. He said seriously, our people did not find these words when they first checked the diving cabin. After the first batch of security agency agents left, you and First Officer Caroline were attacked by a black skeleton in the number 9 cargo bay. And found the words engraved on the inside of the diving cabin. Based on the Soma Consortium and your confession, you think these words were engraved on the black skeleton, right? Yes, Kaylan did not deny it. The diving cabin was finally transported away by the Security Bureau. They would naturally discover the words engraved on the inner wall. There was no need for him to hide it. But this is not the first time this sentence has appeared, Kaylan said again. Did it appear elsewhere? Aya asked. Judging from our time, the diving cabin is indeed the place where the sentence was first discovered, but from the overall timeline, this sentence should have first appeared 49 years ago. 776 Special Forces Team, Collins in the Soldier's Diary. What? Aya's expression changed somewhat. The diary mixed in a pile of antique equipment. When Kaylan was rescued, the pile of items had been inspected by the Security Bureau agents placed inside the crew, but they only saw a messy pile of lines. Neither the stone pillar portrait nor the phrase "I am sorry" and the secret language were found. I would like to mention here that there was a small bug in the previous chapter. The black box found in the cave was lost in the water, and the only thing brought on board was Colin's mission log. I have corrected the bug in the previous chapter. When I first read it, it was there, but after I recovered from my injury, I checked the diary again and found that many pages were missing, including the page with the sentence written on it. Kaylan replied. The pile of things during the time you were injured were kept by our own people. Although many people saw the diary, I can guarantee that absolutely no one will have the opportunity to tear off the pages on it, Hound said immediately. I know, Kaylan nodded. I checked the traces where the pages fell off. It doesn't look like they were torn off. Those pages of the diary may have been soaked in seawater and then fell off on their own. When I escaped from the underwater cave, the situation was so urgent that I didn't have time to put it into a waterproof bag. Then why didn't you report this matter before? You didn't even ask. Oh, by the way, no one from your security bureau came to see me at all. The person who came to see me was Lieutenant General Maginot, who represented the military, but he didn't mention that he was diving at all. The secret messages inside the cabin and Collins's log, I thought this information was not important to you at all. Kaylan declined. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 485. What else do you know? Ayabrita stared at Kaylan. She knew that Ian's rhetoric was to perfunctory her, but she had absolutely nothing to do about it. After all, her superiors had not approved it. Their interrogation request for Kaylan and others. And now, this guy has even become his superior. This is probably the feeling of helplessness. I've told you everything. Kaylan shrugged. It's your turn to answer my question. What is the last mission of the 776 Special Forces team? I don't know either. Aya's answer was quite straightforward. Didn't you already have the highest authority over the Security Bureau's archives? Since you haven't found these things, that means they are not related to restarting Yaguna, but like the Thor project, it has not been archived at all, or it has been completely deleted. So how much do you know about the seed of corrosion attack on the Security Bureau headquarters? Kaylan asked another question. The descriptions in the file only include casualty figures and loss statistics. These data are dry and difficult to carry out. Brainstorming, I want to know something more detailed. I hadn't joined the Security Bureau at that time. How much inside information do you think I could know? Aya asked. I think it's impossible for no one within the Security Bureau to mention this kind of thing, right? Although it may be a shame for you, there will always be some curious guys who want to find out the truth, even if it is an added legend. Okay, let's talk about it, Kaylan encouraged. There are no legends. Aya shook her head slightly. Although there is no hush-hush order within the Security Bureau, few people are willing to mention that incident. All the staff involved in the attack that year, either chose to retire or were transferred from front-line positions. Now, in the entire Security Bureau, except for a very few senior officials, there is no one who has personally experienced that incident, Aya explained. What a pity. Kaylan stood up, carefully folded the small piece of paper written in Spanish into a square the size of a fingernail, and carefully stuffed it into the sealed bag inside the equipment used to store important items. Do you want to continue the autopsy? Ivan, who was squatting next to the corpse, raised his head and looked at Kaylan. Well, let's continue the dissection, Kaylan said. At least we have to figure out how Alfonso died. The dissection work was proceeding in an orderly manner here, while on the other side, Layton's drone discovered some new clues. Alfonso's equipment and clothes were scattered less than 20 meters away from the body. After making sure that there was no danger around, Layton picked up all these things. There were no obvious signs of damage on Alfonso's protective clothing and external equipment, but the inner lining of clothing was torn to pieces. At the same time, Ivan also found stains from these clothing inside his nails. Fiber debris. This shows that he most likely tore the clothes himself. This guy, does he have a mental illness like exhibitionism? Hound curled his lips and said. Not necessarily, he might be crazy. Kaylan looked at Alfonso's equipment and said without raising his head, there are many hunters who have been mentally disturbed by unknown influences in the ruins. Then his skin was peeled off by himself, right? Where was the knife hidden in the peeled skin? The hound's eyes moved to the abdomen of the corpse. Could it be, could he have swallowed it by himself? Bar. As soon as he finished speaking, Ivan used a large scalpel to cut open Alfonso's abdominal cavity, as if to test this possibility. The stomach pouch was empty, and there were no suspicious residues in the esophagus and intestines. I think even if he is crazy, he can't complete such a delicate operation as skinning. Kaylan picked up a piece of fabric and said, look, this piece of clothing was obviously torn to pieces by brute force, and skinning requires it is a precise force and angle, and if you are not careful, the muscle tissue will be injured. But Ivan also said that the peeling technique is perfect. This is not a job that can be completed by a person in a crazy state. It is impossible for humans to peel their own skin, Ivan murmured. There are some blind spots that are simply impossible to reach without the help of professional tools, but I have a guess. What guess? It is also possible that his skin was not peeled off, but was burned away by some highly corrosive substance. As long as the dose is properly controlled, it is possible to completely remove the skin without any damage to the muscle tissue. Ivan said, I once treated a relic hunter. He accidentally touched a similar liquid in the relic. As a result, the skin on the back of the entire hand disappeared, but the bones, muscles and the soft tissues were all unscathed. Will this method leave any traces? Blood, pus, or some form of residue? Kaylan looked at the pile of things uncertainly. There was no blood on his clothes. I found that the ground between the clothes and the body was also very clean, and the only blood stains were only on the handle and receiver of the gun, which was very strange. It's very strange, but this kind of thing is not completely impossible, as far as I know. With the current level of human science and technology, there are several ways to perfectly replicate this scene, let alone Alpha civilization and a more advanced third civilization. Ivan said, the cause of death was found to be severe blood loss from the autopsy, but I could not find severely damaged blood vessels. The blood in his body seemed to have evaporated out of thin air. This is what makes me where you feel confused. In other words, this guy first encountered a monster, then blew up the gun. Then, in despair, he completely fell into madness, tore off his clothes, and then was drained of blood by the monster. The skin fell off and the body was dumped in this place. The hound tried to reconstruct what happened to Alfonso, but no matter how he looked at it, he felt that there seemed to be a problem in some link. In other words, there are problems in every link. Like the three researchers, Alfonso did not find any valuable clues in his belongings, whether it was paper information carriers such as diaries or digital information carriers such as memory cards and videotapes. This pile of things, the only things with the most text printed on them that can be found are his ID card and work badge. This shouldn't be the case. For an exploration mission like this that may have no return, you should carry as much recording equipment as possible. I think it's not too much to be armed to the teeth with all kinds of cameras, but the personal belongings are too simple, right? Even the patrol team stationed at the base will bring more than this, right? Kaylan said, a little depressed. Could it have been left on the vehicle? One of Aya's agents suddenly asked. The mini camera commonly used by relic hunters and the memory card that can store 24 hours of video weigh less than 100 grams together, and are about the same size as your antique lighter. You can just hang it on your shoulder strap. It's not a burden. Several times when I came back from missions, I would remember that there was a camera hanging on my shoulder when I was taking a shower. How could such a small thing end up on a vehicle? PS Thanks to book friend 150607173208659 for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 486. That's true, the agent nodded awkwardly. I think they may have encountered some kind of intelligent creature. This creature not only enjoys playing with its prey, but also knows how to hide key clues so that no one can follow them. Yvonne said. Since this thing wants to leave no trace for those who come after it, why doesn't it just destroy the corpse and eliminate the trace? It should be more convenient for it. There is no need for it to throw a skinned corpse inside the tunnel. Moreover, if key clues are to be hidden, it's impossible that it can't find the note in the corpse's hand, right? The Hound raised several doubts. It's not difficult to explain. The scalpel and scissors were flying up and down between Ivan's fingers, but his mouth did not stop. I just said that this kind of intelligent creature likes to play with its prey, so it must enjoy letting its prey in the process of falling into fear and suspicion, and then having a mental breakdown and falling into madness. The more torture the prey endures, the stronger its pleasure. That's why we see a skinned corpse here. There's that secret phrase that's been bothering us for a long time. It's still wrong. The Hound shook his head repeatedly. Generally, uninformed people will only feel confused when seeing this secret phrase, and will not feel fear at all. Only people like us will be affected by this phrase. Stress response. Is it possible that this monster can also tell fortunes and predict that we will come here, so it deliberately arranged this array? Forget it, we will come here. Kaylan silently repeated the sentence in his heart. His first reaction was the assessment of the Immortal Crew Association. All of this may be a trap set by them. But then I thought about it. Even if the Immortal Crew knew the true meaning of this secret phrase, and even if they knew the secret of Agunakotaur, they would never have expected that their group would be able to find Park Sang-woo in the molten mine area. The rescue cabin, and also learned about the existence of this tunnel from Park Sang-woo's mouth. If this is a setup, then the instability of this game is comparable to a tanker truck driving at high speed on a rugged mountain road. The truck is still loaded with nitroglycerin that has not been desensitized, as long as there is a slight bump. The result is the probability that the reconnaissance team can find Park Sang-woo in the huge molten mine area is considered to be 10%. The probability that Park Sang-woo can survive the rescue without any hiccups is also considered to be 10%. Then the probability that the reconnaissance team can survive the crisis is considered to be 10%. The probability of rescuing Park Sang-woo under the heavy squeezing belt is considered to be 10%. Although this algorithm is very rough and has no actual data support, the probability in reality will only be lower than this 10%. Pick out any one of these things, and there is a 10% probability that anyone with better luck will hit it. But if you multiply so many 10%s together, the final probability will be pitifully low. This value is almost equal to the probability of successful natural evolution of the great god imagined by Kaylan in the sick village. But everything that happened later proved that this false perfect mutant did not exist. The people who actually controlled the sick village were the people of the Undead Crew Association. The entire South 16th District Space Station was not a chaotic borderland, but a chaotic borderland. A large proving ground firmly under the control of the Crew Council. Even the wall of flesh and blood that is displayed on the surface and worshipped as a god by the residents of the sick village is just a cover set up to hide the truth. With the way the Immortal Crew has always behaved, it is impossible for them to do something like this with a probability of only a few 10,000ths. To them, a 50% probability can be considered extremely high risk. Unless there is no other choice. But they clearly have a choice. Only paupers with nothing will become gamblers, while those at the top of power will only pursue the ultimate strategy. In K. Ian's impression, only the group of lunatics from the Japanese island country in the old era could do such things as betting on the fate of the country at every turn. It is true that if they win the bet, the benefits will be huge, but if they lose the bet, what awaits them is an endless abyss. The arrangement of the Immortal Crew meeting can basically be ruled out. Kaylan felt that even they could not have expected the current situation of the reconnaissance team. The autopsy is complete. Except for the skin being peeled off and the abnormal disappearance of blood and body fluids all over the body, there is nothing abnormal about this corpse. Ivan stood up and took off the gauze that was used as a surgical towel in front of him. It came down, because there was no blood on the body, the gauze was very clean and not stained with many stains at all. Alfonso's body was put into a black body bag and stuffed into the cargo hold behind Valkyrie. Because of the weird way of death, his body was far more valuable than those of the three researchers. Although the preliminary autopsy has failed to reveal the real cause of his death, if this body can be brought back to the Ark, it will definitely be more interesting than the group of lunatics in the Institute. Don't be so nervous. Kaylan glanced at the sullen Leighton and Zwilligito and said, if the monster that killed Alfonso dumped his body here, it was to let the next batch. If the prey is in fear and confusion, then we should not follow its wishes. I know. Leighton muttered softly, but if we show fear, the thing should make us jump around a little longer, right? If we show too calmly, maybe it will lose interest. Jumped out and killed us. Coward. The hound turned his head and rolled his eyes at him. I'm not even afraid. Are you afraid of a hammer? Old dog, isn't this like you? Don't you usually act with a clear conscience? Why are you so stubborn this time? Leighton said. If I had the opportunity to escape from here now, I would immediately turn around and run away without saying a word. But the problem is that we can't run away. Since we can't run away, there is no point in coercing. Dogs will jump over walls when they are anxious. It's better to hope that monster jumps out soon than to be worried all the time now. When you were leading troops, have you ever encountered such a desperate situation with no way out? Kaylan suddenly asked. I've encountered it, and more than once. Hound stretched out the little finger of his right hand to pick his nostril, then wiped his hands on the magazine bag, and continued, I have read a novel about Chinese soldiers in the old era. There is a saying that remains fresh in my mind, when we meet on a narrow road, the brave prevails. Now this tunnel is not much wider, so it should be considered a narrow road. Forget it. Kaylan nodded. Anyway, there is no way out, and I feel more at ease. Hound smiled somewhat self-deprecatingly. It's really ridiculous. As he said that, he glanced down at the screen on his wrist. It's about time. It's time to start dinner. In this situation, I don't have the time to cook porridge, so let's fill our stomachs with biscuits and energy bars first. Well, maybe the creature that killed Alfonso is observing us secretly now, so we'd better try not to reveal any flaws. Ivan nodded in agreement. According to the ration standards set by hunting dogs, the ration for each person is 1 compressed biscuit and 1 energy bar, 1 meal every 12 hours. Although the 2 dry foods are not large in size, they provide complete calories. It can satisfy a soldier's consumption for half a day during non-combat periods. The only drawback is that this type of food is not very friendly to people with indigestion. The hound had already eaten a biscuit before. He reasoned that he was allergic to cocoa butter, so he broke the energy bar that was supposed to be given to him into 2 pieces and handed it to the largest person in the team with a relatively larger appetite. The great Zwilligito and Leighton. Leighton didn't think much and just threw the thing into his mouth and started chewing it. Instead, Zwilligito glanced at the half-energy bar in his palm and glanced at the hound with a hesitant expression. But the hound didn't notice his look, and walked towards the others with a backpack full of food. Old dog, he is lying to us. Zwilligito patted Leighton on the shoulder. He is not allergic to cocoa butter at all, otherwise, he would not have brought so many energy bars in his supplies. I remember when he first counted the remaining supplies, he took out 6 energy bars from his bag. Huh, Leighton was stunned for a moment. Although he had known the hounds the longest among the people, he had never paid attention to such details as to whether the hounds were really allergic to cocoa butter. You said that, it's true, he seems to have never mentioned this before. In my impression, he seems to have eaten chocolate a few times. He left this to us on purpose, Zwilligito said. Although from the appearance point of view, he can definitely be regarded as a rugged and tough man. In fact, this Mongolian man is quite thoughtful and has strong observation skills, otherwise, he would have been on the transport plane that time. It was impossible for him to react so quickly and pull the fallen Kaylan back into the cabin in time. At that critical moment, everyone else's attention was focused on Kaylan. Only he was the first to notice that the falling box would drag Kaylan down, who had just returned to the cabin. In fact, Ian's body was still in the cabin. Before he started to lean back, Zwilajito had already loosened his seat belt and jumped forward. It's just that Zwilajito usually talks less and rarely expresses his emotions on his face, so he gives people a relatively honest impression. If you didn't tell me earlier, I would have swallowed it all. Layton was stunned for a moment, and then asked a stupid question. Tell me, if I pick it out from my throat now, then give it back to him, will he still want it? Stop picking. If you don't think it's disgusting, the old dog is disgusting. Kaylan suddenly intervened and explained to the two of them in a low voice, as a distributor, the old dog must be fair. But for everyone's existence in terms of individual differences, absolute fairness is actually unfair. The two of you weigh almost twice as much as the rest of the team, and you naturally need to consume more energy during activities, but if the old dog gives more for this reason, if you share the food, even though we ourselves won't say anything, those security agents will definitely have some thoughts in their minds, so he can only share his share with you. That's no good, I can't have this, Zwilajito said. Actually, he is right in how he distributes it. The old dog is lean and weighs the least in the team. He evenly distributes his food to you. It can be regarded as a kind of dynamic balance. Believe me, as an experienced veteran, he is not that stupid, and he will definitely not starve himself. If you two plan to compensate him, you might as well wait until you return to the Ark and treat him to a big meal. As Kaylan spoke, he also stuffed his energy bar into Zwilajito. Actually, my appetite is not big. If you don't have enough to eat, I still have some here. No, Zwilajito waved his hands repeatedly, the food I received is completely enough. If you don't want to eat now, you can stay here for emergencies. After all, we don't know how many days we will be trapped here. Woolen cloth. Yes, Kaylan put the energy bar into his small bag and patted Layton's robotic arm. Have you finished eating? Do you want to go for a walk with me? Take a walk. Layton turned his head and looked at the surrounding scene, feeling a little confused for a moment. Layton and I will go ahead to explore the road first, and the others will rest where they are for 10 minutes. Kaylan opened the team communication channel and said to everyone. Exploring the way, the hound turned his head and said with a frown, should we say goodbye? The most taboo thing in this situation is to move separately. What if that thing suddenly launches an attack while you two are alone? Don't worry, we won't leave your field of vision, but the remote control range of the drone has ended. Layton and I will walk another 20 or 30 meters forward so that the drone can run farther, Kaylan said. Then you must be careful, the hound ordered. The two of them walked until they were 30 meters away from the main force. Then Kaylan asked Layton to squat down and pretended to be playing with the drone. Kaylan, what's the matter? You have to drag me here. Can't you use the one-on-one communication channel? Layton asked. I need you to do a favor, Kaylan said. What's the deal? Don't rush to ask what the business is. Let me tell you what I just thought of. Kaylan turned around and glanced at the rescue capsule fixed on the bracket in the distance. Ivan had already finished his meal and was checking on Park Sang-woo. Physical condition. I suspect that Park Sang-woo has a problem, Kaylan said solemnly. Is there a problem? What problem? Layton tilted his head. Didn't you have already interrogated him? Does he have something to hide from us? It's hard to say. If my suspicion is correct, it only means that this guy's acting skills are too strong. Not only were we deceived by him, but not, even the big shots in the Security Bureau and ARC's upper echelons, he was deceived. P.S. Thanks to the West Aeros Otaku team for the 200 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 487. Why do you think so? Layton couldn't help but ask. Because of the information about this tunnel, I didn't see even half a word in the files of the Security Bureau, Kaylan said. Although this tunnel was discovered by the people of the Restart Project team, it will not be confirmed until it is determined after the tunnel is no longer related to Yagunactor. The tunnel should be transferred to the Ruins Development Department of the Molten Mine area for management. Once the latter takes over the tunnel, it will inevitably upload the corresponding information to the archives. But I found nothing. Could it be that the time was too short and they didn't have time to upload the information? Even if this tunnel was handed over to the development department the day before the earthquake, at least a new folder with the project number should have been left. Moreover, for a ruin of this level, even if no one is stationed to guard it, at least a semi-permanent supply station should be built at the entrance for subsequent exploration. But from the time we entered this tunnel until now, have any such traces been found? When you say that, it seems like there really isn't. Layton's eyes lit up. Even though this tunnel has no research value, its construction material is solid nano-alloy. It is impossible for the development department to leave such a piece of fertilizer. I don't care about the meat. On ARC, credit points are equivalent to banknotes issued by various countries in the old era. They have no value in themselves. They can only be regarded as a value symbol, but because the issuer of credit points, ARC, shares will and woe with all mankind, and the official strictly controls its circulation, so the purchasing power of credit points has always been in a very stable state. But when it comes to hard currency that can be recognized by most people in this era, there are only two things. On the Earth in the old era, the two most common hard currencies and the most easily accepted by the general public were gold and silver, known as precious metals, but now, these two things have become energy from the alpha ruins, crystalline and nano-alloys. This tunnel, to use the metaphor of the old era, is at least equivalent to a rich gold mine with extremely high reserves, although this statement is inevitably suspected of being a waste of resources, just like treating a piece of equipment that integrates various high-tech technologies as scrap metal. The price per pound is the same, but this just illustrates the value of this tunnel from another aspect. It is absolutely impossible for the development department to conceal this matter. Even if the report is delayed, they will be held accountable for a large amount of responsibility. Even if the director of the Molten Mine Development Department has overwhelming power, he would not dare to monopolize this gold mine. This thing is completely different from the pure energy crystallization of the Leviathan mine, which only requires a small box. It can be taken out of the base without anyone noticing, and if you want to develop this tunnel in the molten mine area, it is impossible to hide it from anyone. This is a serious crime, and not only the offender will be sentenced to severe punishment, but also their family, relatives, and friends will be affected. Park Sang-woo said that he himself walked back and forth in the tunnel, and that the project team also conducted a detailed survey of the entire tunnel. Although the tunnel he mentioned may not be the same tunnel as the one we are in now, but this means that the development progress of the tunnel is actually very complete, Kaylan said. As long as the Restart Project team's investigation report on the tunnel is deleted, those parts involving important secrets can be submitted directly as a prospecting report, and the Ruins Development Department in the Molten Mine area will be equivalent to getting a big bargain. But this investigation report does not exist. Even the information related to this tunnel cannot be found. Layton followed K-Ian's train of thought. Even the Restart Yagunactor project, such top-level secrets have left some clues in the archives of the Security Bureau. Such a painless tunnel cannot have a higher confidentiality level than the Restart project. This is the only flaw in Park Sang-woo's words, Kaylan said in a deep voice. At that time, he had already revealed the secret of Yagunactor and expressed his willingness to cooperate. He took this opportunity to tell us the location of the tunnel when our vigilance against him was at a minimum. Do you suspect that he deliberately tricked us here? Layton's breathing became slightly faster. It's hard to say now. We can't determine his motives and purposes, but we have to be on guard. Kaylan glanced at the rescue cabin in the distance with the corner of his eye. We were deceived once by that woman named Yui. As a price, we lost Liao Zilang. I don't want this to happen again. Speaking of that woman, this Park Sang-woo, could it be that she is also a member of the heretical sect? Layton's facial muscles trembled slightly with excitement. The surrender is false, and the resources of the Ark are used to locate Yagunakter's coordinates are his real purpose. However, if he is from a heretical sect, why not just lure those monsters over? If he wants to kill us, that should be easier, right? There is no need to deceive us. Come from this tunnel. What's more, he himself is with us. If there is any danger here, wouldn't he be able to escape? He can use the resources of the Ark to locate Yagunakter, and naturally he can also use our power to explore this ancient battleship. Whether in his eyes or in the eyes of the heretical sect, Yagunakter's life is much more important than the lives of a few of us. Then what should we do now? Showdown with him directly, Layton asked. Do you think he will admit it? Kaylan asked. Besides, we don't have conclusive evidence now. Everything we just said was just speculation. Except for him, everyone who knows about this tunnel is already dead. If he insists that he has no knowledge of these things, there is nothing we can do against him. The method of coercing a confession has been used once, but it will not work the second time. What should we do? That's why I called you out, because I need your help. What do you want me to do? Layton asked seriously. Forge a piece of data. Kaylan took out a black memory card from his pocket and said. What data? Layton asked. The list of people who entered the magma channel. Kaylan said word by word. A soldier never tires of deception. Since Park Sang-woo didn't tell us the truth, we might as well deceive him. After a while, Kaylan and Layton returned to the main force. At this time, the others were basically rested and were waiting for his order to move forward. But Kaylan said to everyone with a serious face, Layton and I just made a new discovery, and this discovery is related to you, Dr. Park Sang-woo. What? It has something to do with me. Park Sang-woo looked at Kaylan with a blank look on his face. You said before that there were 4 members of the expert team entering the magma channel, right? Kaylan walked to the rescue cabin and asked him through the porthole. When we entered the passage, we found 3 bodies, namely Dr. Burnferry, Dr. Muller von Gudryan and Mr. Huang Rongxuan, but the 4th expert was missing. Logically speaking, the 4 of them should be together. How do I know this? Maybe they got separated? Wasn't Alfonso's body far away from them? And the vehicle driver, he is also missing. Park Sang-woo said. I just want to ask what the name of the 4th expert is. Kaylan looked directly into Park Sang-woo's eyes and placed his hands on both sides of the porthole. Let me think about it. Park Sang-woo subconsciously avoided K-Ian's gaze. It's Alex Sashes. Team leader Brita, please check this person's information. Kaylan turned his head and said to Aya. I checked, there is indeed such a person. Aya. Brita nodded. Alex Sashes, a senior researcher at the institute, a materials science expert, and the 3 experts who were killed were the person who was transferred to the base in the molten mine area during the same period should also be a member of the Restart project team. This person's name is also on the list of missing persons. Alex Sachs, why would a materials expert become a member of the death squad? You all already know that the main material of Agunakotaur is nanoalloy. We need to study nanoalloy. There are plenty of samples outside. Why do we need to enter the magma channel? Kaylan continued to ask Park Sang-woo. I don't know what you mean by these words. Why can't materials experts voluntarily join the advance team? After all, this is likely to be a journey with no return, and not everyone can risk life and death. They all voluntarily participated in this operation. That's not right, Kailan interrupted Park Sang-woo's defense. Indeed, most people are afraid of death, but when it comes to which place has the most people who are not afraid of death, I don't think it is the Field Corps combat troops at the forefront. On the contrary, it's a research institute under the heavy protection of ARC. He took a breath and continued, although I have come into contact with almost a handful of researchers, I have heard a lot about the deeds of this group of lunatics, Dr. Park Sang-woo. Since you can say the words ignoring life and death in short, I wonder if you have heard of another ancient Chinese saying. What? Hear the Tao in the morning and die in the evening. Yes, there are a group of such lunatics in the institute. In order to explore truth and knowledge, morals, ethics, and even their own lives can be used for them. The price of exchange, I think, as someone who has worked there, you should know this better than me, right? Kailan grinned. If it weren't for ARC's legal control, this group of people would probably be able to going to do a lot of shattering things. What on earth do you want to say? Park Sang-woo began to show an impatient look. But Kailan knew that this impatience was just to cover up the deeper tension and panic. In order to cover up a lie, he needs to tell more lies to make up for it, but the more lies he tells, the more loopholes he can catch. I think if this kind of opportunity is there, this group of experts will fight for their heads, right? Even if the experts on the project team are not all the kind of lunatics who don't want their lives, then it should be casual to gather 4 suicide squads. It's a convenient thing, right? How can it be the turn of Alex, an expert whose expertise is not very useful in exploring lava channels and ancient battleships? The situation was urgent at that time, and we didn't think about it that much at all, Park Sang-woo said. The 4 of them were the first ones to volunteer to enter the lava channel, so. I thought so at first, but it wasn't until I discovered this. Kailan took out the black memory card from his pocket and stuck it on the porthole of the rescue cabin. What is this? Park Sang-woo looked at the black memory card, and the corners of his eyes jumped involuntarily. I picked it up with a drone 100 meters away from Alfonso's body, Kailan said. This thing should be the most commonly used large-capacity memory card within the Institute. It is made of arc crystal. Made by Silicon Technology Company, with a single chip capacity of 65 TB, you probably don't recognize Dr. Park Sang-woo. Is this your new discovery? Is this discovery related to me? Yes, Kailan said, there are several recordings in it, and a total of 6 people's voices appear. After a one-to-one comparison with the voice data retained in the archives, I confirmed the identities of 5 of them. Which 5 people are they? 4 of them are dead, and our bodies have been found. As for the temporarily unrecognizable voice, I think it should be the driver of the vehicle. As long as we spend a certain amount of time checking, we can also determine his identity. Of course, this is not important. What is important is that voice that is somewhat familiar to me. With that said, Kailan put away the memory card and took a step back. The 4th expert who entered the magma channel was not Alex Sashes, but you, Park Sang-woo. You lied from the beginning and let us enter this tunnel, which was also your intention. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone except Layton and Park Sang-woo were shocked. Everyone's eyes were focused on the rescue capsule, and the 2 agents even took out their weapons. You heard wrong. Park Sang-woo's tone was unexpectedly calm. I may hear wrongly, but the machine won't, unless this Alex has exactly the same voice as you. Park Sang-woo looked at him deeply, his lips moved slightly, as if he was whispering something. What did you say? Louder. Kailan frowned, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. Park Sang-woo twitched the corners of his mouth, a playful smile leaked from his eyes, but his mouth did not stop. Holy word! He is reciting the holy word. Kailan reacted suddenly and shouted quickly, everyone retreat and prepare for battle. Park Sang-woo's body was seriously injured, and coupled with the restraint devices, his body could not move at all, and there was no parasitic corrosive seed in his body. Kailan thought that he would not be able to resist, but he took the holy word. Forget it. Kaylan had already drawn his gun and pointed the trigger at the rescue cabin. However, the bullets were unable to penetrate the portholes made of bulletproof glass, leaving only a large number of cracks that spread like spider webs. Park Sang-woo in the rescue capsule has changed from a strong man to a haggard old man. His eye sockets were sunken, and his skin clung to the outline of his bones. The flesh and blood had completely disappeared. His entire face looked like a skeleton, which also made his smile look extremely sinister. The ceremony has reached its final stage. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 488. Valentina. Release the fixed bracket. Release the rescue capsule, Kaylan shouted again. It's a sacrificial ceremony. Aya, who is the leader of the special agent team of the Security Bureau, also saw the change in Park Sang-woo. This man is a key member of the heretical sect. Only key members can initiate this kind of ceremony. The signal light on the top of the rescue capsule has turned red. This means that Park Sang-woo's body has died, and something indescribable in words is coming to this world using his flesh and blood as a medium. It's too late. Even if his body is blown to pieces now, there's no way to interrupt the ceremony, Kaylan said. The situation in front of him was something he didn't expect. He hadn't even used the forgery. He asked Layton to help him. Evidence: Park Sang-woo didn't ask for it, and he even showed his trump card directly. He is a true madman, a madman who doesn't care about his own life in order to achieve his goals, far crazier than the guys in the institute. His acting skills are even more superb than Yui Arazaka's, and everyone can even feel the fear, despair, and inner struggle he showed before. However, all of this is just his disguise. Didn't we check this guy's body to make sure he was not infected by the cells of the seed of corrosion? The hound pointed its muzzle at the door of the rescue cabin. What's going on? It's not a seed of erosion, Kaylan said. This is a sacrificial ritual that is even more incomprehensible than the seed of erosion. With our current technological level, it is impossible to understand the principle of this ritual. The thing summoned by this ritual is much stronger than the seed of corrosion. It's that kind of black skeleton. It was mentioned in the report on the East 9th District operation, Ayabrita said. It's the thing you encountered in the Pioneer 9 cargo bay. The things summoned by this kind of ritual don't seem to be fixed. Kaylan remembered what happened when he recited the holy word. This kind of sacrificial ritual will be completely different due to the difference in the content of the prayers. Different results. This is like an ordinary person praying to the god of wealth for wealth. Assuming that the god of wealth really exists and hears the person's prayer, there are many ways to satisfy the prayer's wishes. The stocks and funds purchased by the prayer can suddenly be affected by something. If the price skyrocketed due to some reasons, he might also pick up a bag of diamonds left behind by others when he went out the next day. As long as the ultimate goal can be achieved, not many people will care about the process of achieving the goal. The black-robed believer I met in East 9th District, the content of the holy word prayer was to gain powerful power, so he turned into a monster like a black skeleton. Not only did the purpose of gaining power be achieved, but in the prayer the phrase "I am willing to sacrifice myself" has also become a fact. When facing Arazaka Yui, Kaylan did not directly pray to the great god for strength, but said that he wanted to kill him. His goal was also achieved, and in the process of achieving it, however, his body did not show any abnormal changes. But if you want to modify the holy word, one prerequisite is that you must master the language of the Alpha civilization. According to the current known information, he and the Prophet are the only two people who have this ability. There is definitely a price to pay for using the holy word, but obviously the Prophet also knows this. Otherwise, with the help of the power of the great God, the heretical sect can easily destroy the Ark and become the ruler of mankind. As for other people, it is even less possible to rely on the holy word or unimaginable power. In those memory fragments, it is clearly stated that using the holy word requires paying the life force equivalent to the gift, and the life force of an ordinary human being, in the eyes of the great God, is very small. To use a metaphor that is more understandable, it is a desperate person who sells his body to arms dealers in exchange for weapons. Ordinary people with ordinary looks, ordinary people who don't have much life force to pay for, might be able to in exchange for a pistol or a grenade, and for that kind of beautiful woman who is alluring to the country, human beings with extremely strong vitality, maybe they can exchange for a few more kilograms of C4 explosives, but no matter how beautiful they are, the limit of human vitality, it is impossible for people to exchange weapons like intercontinental missiles from arms dealers. It's not that the arms dealers don't have missiles, it's just that no one can afford the price. Of course, quantitative changes can also lead to qualitative changes, and the birth of Z-Logo is an example. To be honest, Kaylan is not particularly worried about what Park Sang-woo's sacrifice ceremony can summon. With his own vitality, the most he can exchange for is monsters like black skeletons, but as far as the reconnaissance team found with some firepower, it only takes a few seconds to blast the black skeleton into smithereens. Subject to the principle of equivalent exchange, no matter how terrifying the power of the great God is, only a very small part of it can be lent to Park Sang-woo. But I don't know if it's because Park Sang-woo is an enhanced person, but the power he exchanged seems to be a little too much. He did not turn into a black skeleton. The originally shriveled body quickly expanded again. The whole body was like an inflated balloon, instantly filling the remaining space in the rescue cabin. The facial features were completely distorted. Above the porthole, it looks particularly weird. Bang! Everyone heard a muffled sound like a balloon exploding from the rescue cabin. Blood and minced meat were coated in a thick layer on the inside of the porthole, making it impossible to see the scene inside. "This guy, could it be, exploded?" Hound muttered in a low voice. "I don't know." Layton shook his head, "but the rescue capsule seems to be moving. I heard the sound of something squirming inside." "It was slimy," Akira Asano said. He held the scabbard horizontally with his left hand, and tightly grasped the handle of the knife with his right hand. He had already made the starting position of IAI/action. "It's about to come out." Zwilligito stared at the hatch nervously and moved his finger to the trigger. Bang! The next second, the door of the rescue cabin was knocked open by a huge force, and dozens of thick tentacles, as thick as a person's arms and covered with mucus, poured out from inside the rescue cabin. It did not. He also threw away the life capsule, but lifted it up and carried it behind his back. Kaylan felt that this thing looked like some kind of mollusk with a hard shell. The heavy and hard rescue capsule was its protective shell. "Team leader, what kind of ammunition should be used for this thing?" an agent asked anxiously. "You can't blame him, because the monster Park Sang-woo turned into is too much like the seed of corrosion. Every trained Security Bureau agent knows that the seed of corrosion can only be killed with active ammunition. However, the physical lethality of active ammunition itself is very low. In many cases, conventional ammunition is required to tear apart the body of the erosion seed and expose the nucleus to the outside to be effective." They were completely unsure whether the monster in front of them was a seed of corrosion. It was too similar. This thing was so similar that even this group of people with the most experience in dealing with seeds of corrosion would find it difficult not to compare the two. Connected together. Before Iabra could speak, Kaylan said, "First, use conventional ammunition to suppress the fire first. Even if you can't kill it, you can at least hinder it. Use conventional ammunition." No signs of infection were found in Park Sang-woo's body before. "This thing just looks similar to the seed of corrosion, and it is definitely not the same creature." Aya glanced at Kaylan quickly and shouted to her men. "Don't be too sure, no one knows what the things summoned by the sacrificial ritual are, Maybe the first erosion seed on Alpha Planet was summoned by this sacrificial ritual Kaylan said to Aya while pouring firepower towards Park Sang-woo. Then do you know what this monster is? I said I don't know. If you want to study this thing, I suggest killing it first. Although the corpse is not as valuable as the living sample, it is at least safe. Kaylan shouted loudly to avoid his own. The sound was drowned out by the cacophony of gunfire. Are you still in the mood to joke at this time? I'm not kidding, I'm just stating the facts. Except for Valentina's body, everyone was retreating while firing at the monster that Park Sang-woo had turned into. Countless bullets hit those tentacles as if they were hitting an extremely soft piece of plasticine. The warhead penetrated the tentacle almost without any hindrance, but except for a bullet hole that penetrated front and back, it did not cause any greater trauma. Generally speaking, if an organism is shot, especially a large caliber full power bullet, the kinetic energy attached to the bullet will directly tear a large piece of flesh and blood from the hit site, or directly crush the internal organs. But when it hit this monster, the kinetic energy on the bullet seemed to disappear for a moment, and it passed straight through its body. It was not repelled by the barrage, but instead kept crawling towards everyone. Those tentacles squirmed slowly, leaving several twisted traces of slime on the ground. Conventional ammunition doesn't seem to work on this thing, shouted the Hound. It doesn't even hinder its movement. Change to active ammunition, test fire 1 round first. Kaylan emptied a magazine in one breath, then replaced it with a new magazine with a yellow and black biological hazard logo on it, and picked up the gun. Short burst. The distance between them and the monster is less than 20 meters. With the help of the power armor's auxiliary aiming system, even waste fire can hit 100%, these warheads explode after drilling into the tentacles. When opened, the active cells of the flesh-eating worm contained in the sealed tube were released. Nothing happens. According to previous examples, if active ammunition is used to shoot erosion seeds, even if the core is not hit, even if the dose toxicity of active cells in the ammunition is far from reaching the threshold of killing the target, at least the tissue at the shot site will still die quickly, but the monster in front of him seemed completely unaffected by the active cells of the flesh-eating worm. Don't waste active ammunition. This thing is not a seed of erosion, Kaylan shouted immediately. Then how can we kill it? The Hound put the magazine he just took out back angrily. Conventional ammunition is not effective, and active ammunition is also ineffective. Is it possible to use artillery shells to bomb it? The Valkyrie body is equipped with some heavy firepower weapons, but when bombarding targets at this distance and in a closed environment like a tunnel, the aftermath will 100% affect them. Even if they are protected by powered armor, it will be very difficult. It is difficult to guarantee that there will be no damage. Unless the distance can be increased, but Kaylan noticed that the monster's movement speed was gradually accelerating, and it seemed to be gradually adapting to this body. This may be the reason why it did not attack everyone at the first time. Half a minute has passed now. The members of the reconnaissance team have changed from slowly retreating to running back while turning around and shooting. The monster is moving 4 or 5 times faster than at the beginning. Every time those tentacles squirm, it can move several meters on the smooth metal ground. At this time, it is already very difficult to distance yourself from it. Unless someone takes the initiative to sacrifice themselves to hold this monster back and allow others to retreat beyond the scope of the heavy firepower. Kaylan would not issue such an order unless absolutely necessary. Kaylan, don't you have any clue? This thing is crawling faster and faster, and we are about to be overtaken by it. After discovering that both types of ammunition were ineffective, the Hound simply stopped shooting. Instead, he rummaged through his equipment bag, trying to find something that could stop this monster. Kaylan naturally knew what it meant when the Hound asked him, "Do you have any clues?" Clue refers to the memory fragments that automatically emerged in his mind when he came into contact with things related to the Alpha civilization, that time in the exile camp. Here, they encountered the seed of corrosion for the first time. Kalen relied on the information provided in these memory fragments and used the carcass of the flesh-eating worm to trap and kill the monster. But this time, nothing popped into Ian's mind. After entering this tunnel, those memory fragments hidden in the depths of my mind seemed to have fallen into dormancy and never appeared once. I don't know why, Kalen suddenly had a very strange idea. Those memories seemed to be of fear of this place. P.S. Thanks to Xiaopang Dunyu for the 500 starting coins, thanks to the villain among the villains, Infinite Demon for the 100 starting coins. P.P.S. The temperature has dropped suddenly in the past few days. Less than a week after I recovered from the cold, I seem to have a fever again. I will go to the hospital for a checkup tomorrow. In addition, everyone should also pay attention to keeping warm and wear more clothes to avoid catching a cold. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 489. Could it be that the third civilization that built this tunnel and the ancient battleship Yagonactor was the culprit that caused the disappearance of the Alpha civilization? But the existence of the molten mine area proves one thing: from the timeline, the note of the existence of this third civilization is earlier than the Alpha civilization. The period of the existence of the third civilization is like the Earth being ruled by dinosaurs. In the Mesozoic era, by the time humans were born, these ancient creatures had already been completely extinct. However, one difference is that the technological level of the third civilization is far higher than that of the Alpha civilization, so the time difference between the existence of the two is probably far more than a few 100 million years. Kalen estimated that the civilization level of this third civilization must have entered the sequence of third-level civilization. In addition to being destroyed by a higher-level civilization, it is difficult for a third-level civilization to die on its own. Dinosaurs can only face extinction when faced with a series of disasters such as meteorite impacts and climate change, but humans can escape from the Earth and destroy their species. Continues to this day. Perhaps this third civilization still exists in a certain corner of the universe, but it was just that they gave up Alpha Star due to natural disasters, resources, or population, and instead opened up territories in the vast starry sky. Then one day, they suddenly wanted to return to their former home planet on a whim, but they discovered this group of Alpha people occupying the Magpie's Nest, and then wiped out the Alpha civilization in a rage. But if this is the case, why are there so many intact remains of Alpha civilization left on this planet? Moreover, apart from Yagonactor and this tunnel, there is nothing more related to the third civilization on Alpha planet. The term Mother Planet may not be accurate. Kalen thought of another possibility: the third civilization's fleet discovered this planet while exploring the unknown star field, and then erased the Alpha civilization. As for this battleship, both sides during the battle, he was shot down by Alpha civilization by chance and fell into the magma lake. That's not right either. The molten mine area was obviously built for Yagonactor, which means that the Alpha civilization has at least mined nano-alloy on this ancient battleship for decades. With the gap between the two civilizations, it seems that the war cannot last for such a long time. The only explanation is that this battleship is actually just a long-distance reconnaissance ship with a low level of weapons configuration. After being defeated by the Alpha civilization, it took the army of the third civilization several decades to cross the distant time and space. Came over and destroyed the Alpha civilization? However, if the third civilization won the war, why didn't it develop Alpha planet into its own colony? Could it be that he doesn't like this planet? Although planet Alpha is much poorer than the Earth once was, as a planet suitable for the survival of carbon-based organisms, it is already considered to be one of the few in the universe. The Ark drifted for 900 years before finding such a planet. It is difficult to find such a planet. Could it be that this third civilization is not a carbon-based civilization? There is another doubt: if a war breaks out between the third civilization and the Alpha civilization, wouldn't the great god believed in by the Alpha civilization intervene? Would he, or they, watch helplessly as his loyal followers were destroyed? At one time, Kalen thought that the great god was just a fictitious idol, just like the God and Buddha that humans once believed in. However, After experiencing the holy word, his attitude changed 180 times. A degree of change, the great God believed in by the Alpha civilization is real, and he has the power to subvert the human worldview. This power, from a human perspective, is almost equivalent to a miracle. What makes Kalan most uneasy is that when his followers pray to him, he will respond. In other words, this great God is very likely to be watching everything that happens on this planet. This can't help but make Kalan feel creepy. That monster, it stopped, an agent shouted, and Lochhoran's thoughts were brought back to reality. He turned his head and saw that Park Sang-woo had stopped, and the front ends of its tentacles were like calyxes. It cracked open, revealing the small and dense fangs inside. Is this its mouth? The hound frowned and said, it's really disgusting. I don't want to be bitten by this thing. Everyone stopped and stared at the monster warily. One agent tried to fire 2 shots. One bullet passed through the tentacles, and the hole formed was filled with mucus almost in the blink of an eye. Then it disappeared, and the other one disappeared. One bullet hit the teeth inside the mouth, making a crisp sound like metal collision. But these 2 shots made the tentacles on the monster tremble violently, especially the cracked flesh flap at the front end of the tentacles, which trembled at an alarming frequency. Combined with what the hound said before, one can't help but feel that it was screaming. But no one heard any sound. Could this be an infrasonic attack? One of Aya's agents suddenly said this. But my equipment did not detect infrasound waves. Before Layton could finish his words, the agent suddenly changed his expression and walked straight towards the monster. Nicholas! What are you doing? Aya shouted immediately. The agent named Nicholas didn't pay attention to Aya's words. He didn't even look back and stopped when he was only 10 meters away from the monster. Danger! Nikolai! Stay away from this monster! Come back to me quickly! Nikolai turned a deaf ear to Aya's order. He stood in front of the monster, motionless as if looking into the monster's non-existent eyes. You guys cover for me, I'll pull him back. After Aya finished speaking, she was about to rush out, but her wrist was grabbed tightly by Kalan. Don't go. Otherwise you will become like him, Kalan shouted sternly, with a solemn look in his eyes. You know what happened to him, right? Aya asked anxiously, is this a spiritual attack? Nicholas was seduced, or, in other words, controlled. Almost. Kalan nodded. Is there any way to save him? Aya continued to ask, speaking quickly, how do you ruin hunters deal with this kind of situation? I can't just watch him be. Before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Kalan. It's too late. Kalan shook his head at Aya. Nikolai's body was seen trembling along with the monster. He slowly turned around and raised the visor of his helmet. His expression looked extremely dull, and dark red blood slowly overflowed from his nostrils and corners of his eyes. There seemed to be something squirming in his throat, and these things began to rise up, and then he spat it out with a wow. What he spit out was not the food residue covered in digestive juices, but a large group of tentacles that kept moving. These tentacles rolled back to cover his face. Faintly, Kalan seemed to hear the bones being crushed. The sound of that thing. How did that thing get into his body? Layton exclaimed. There is obviously no direct contact between him and that monster. With a plop, Nikolai's body fell face down to the ground. From his body, a ball of tentacles several meters long came out. The surface of this ball of tentacles was covered with mucus, dirty blood, and undigested food. Complete fragments of internal organs staggered and struggled towards Kalan and the others. Is this the monster's larvae? Yvonne stared closely at the newborn tentacles and murmured, when was the larval embryo implanted into the agent's body? Before the sacrifice ceremony? Or after the sacrificial ceremony? The method of implantation cannot be ascertained. Don't think about it yet, this thing is crawling over, Layton shouted while shooting at the tentacle group. However, this little guy is the same as the mother body, and the bullets can't cause effective damage to it, even if it is hit by even if the machine gun breaks it into a sieve, it will heal as before in just 1 second. Damn it, I don't believe I can't kill you. The hound angrily took out a large defensive grenade, pulled it open and counted for a few seconds, then threw it towards the tentacles. What the old dog threw is the HF-25 type grenade. The killing radius of this thing is 40 meters. Try not to use power armor to resist. Find a bunker, Layton shouted, and at the same time opened the energy shield, knocking Kaylan and the others protected him behind him. Valentina also controlled the machine and jumped in front of everyone, preparing to block the shockwave and fragments. However, before the grenade thrown by the hound hit the ground, several tentacles shot out quickly captured it in mid-air. Just when everyone was worried that the monster would throw the grenade back, those tentacles were about to explode. The grenade was tightly wrapped, and the tentacles were stuck to each other, forming a sealed space. Boom! A muffled sound came from inside the confined space. The tentacles that were stuck together suddenly expanded to more than 10 meters wide like balloons filled with high-pressure gas. Through the mucous membrane that had become thinner due to stretching, Kaylan could even see the fire caused by the explosion billowing inside the balloon. However, the balloon did not burst. Instead, after a few seconds, it gradually deflated until it returned to its normal size. Then, the tentacles that were stuck together separated into a pile of irregular metal fragments. It fell to the ground. An explosion with astonishing power was so easily defused, the hound was so shocked that his eyes almost fell out. Is this even humming okay? He murmured, I have thought of many ways for this monster, but I never thought it could resist grenades in this way. I first saw it swallowing grenades. After that, I thought it was dead. It seems to be able to control the strength of body tissues at will, Yvonne said. When we shoot with firearms, bullets can easily penetrate its tentacles, but this grenade that exploded in its body, whether it is a shockwave or a metal, the fragments were unable to break through the extremely thin layer of flesh membrane. This characteristic reminded me of a creature we once encountered. You mean those sea anemone heads inside Leviathan? Kaylan said. Yvonne nodded. There was no obvious weakness in that thing. The only head that was killed was by Akira Asano, who relied on hard power to kill him head-on, Kaylan said, but before I figure out the cause of the agent's death, I can't let him rashly kill him. Let Asano Akira rush forward and engage in close combat with the monster. No, Kaylan, you may have missed one thing. Those sea anemone heads have a weakness, Yvonne said calmly. This weakness was the first one you discovered. They are afraid of acid. When we and Chong were after the anemone head at the front enters close combat, the anemone head at the rear will no longer spit acid. Acid, indeed, this method has not been tried yet. Kaylan turned to look at Layton. Is there any acidic corrosive liquid that can be used as a weapon? Or a strong alkaline one will work? There are only a small amount of concentrated hydrochloric acid and concentrated sulfuric acid, but even if they are used to synthesize aqua regia, the corrosiveness is not as corrosive as the acid secreted by the anemone heads, Layton replied. At least give it a try. Ian's eyes kept wandering around the monster's mother body and the group of tentacles. Just as Layton was busy preparing the aqua regia, he suddenly discovered that there was a tumor-like protrusion at the tail of the group of tentacles. The outside of this thing was covered with a layer of translucent mucous membrane, and inside was a black object the size of a fist, beating continuously like a heart. Is this the heart of this monster? Or nuclear? Kaylan couldn't help but turn his attention to the monster mother body that Park Sang-woo turned into, trying to find a similar structure in it, but soon, he discovered a problem. The mother body did not abandon the rescue capsule, but carried the hard shell behind it like a conch. The position of the rescue capsule just covers the knob-like bulge behind it. If it weren't for this larvae without a shell, Kaylan wouldn't have been able to discover that the monster had hidden this abnormal part of its body in the rescue cabin. That's its weakness. Valentina. Can you see the knob-like bump at the end of the tentacle? You can see, it keeps moving, and the part you mentioned is occasionally exposed. Valentina replied, do you want me to shoot here? Yes, use an electromagnetic sniper cannon, try not to let the shells pass through its body. If this is its weakness, it will definitely try its best to block the bullets fired here, Kaylan said. Okay, I understand. Valentina pulled down the scope and began to adjust the angle of the muzzle. At this time, Lighton finally prepared the aquaregia and smashed the bottle containing the aquaregia towards the tentacle ball. This time, the tentacle did not reach towards the glass bottle, but dodged to one side. However, it was this evasive action that directly exposed the knob-like protrusion on its tail to Valkyrie's muzzle. Valentina pulled the trigger without hesitation.